tutorial for joining a Vikkel braid in the round, creating a Vikkel braid and joining it seamlessly and invisibly in the round. There are a lot of tutorials out there for how to join a Vikkel braid, but they don't, to my mind, they don't have the seamless 100% invisible join that I'm completely looking for. If you don't know what a Vikkel braid is, sometimes known as the Lateral Braid or the Estonian Braid, it's one of these, so it's not that two-colour twisting stranded braid that you'll see, the Latvian braid on a lot of mitten cuffs. It's this little line of horizontal V stitches that you can see across the top of this piece of stocking stitch here, and you see all the V's are lining up that way, that way, that way, that way, that way. The rest of this swatch does show that it's possible to work a Vikkel braid in the opposite direction with the V's going that way, but that's a whole other story and a tutorial for another time. So I have this tiny teeny little swatch that I've been working on here, which is worked in the round magic loop, and I'm going to demonstrate how to start working the Vikkel braid and how we can join it seamlessly. The first thing to do is, because we have this sort of extra layer of stitches that sits underneath the needle just here as we create them, we want to make an extra stitch to begin that, and I'm going to use the cable cast on method, which means going not in through the stitch as if to knit, but in between the two stitches there. We're going to wrap the yarn, draw a loop through, and then put it back on the needle just like any other form of cast on there, and now I have this extra stitch here. Don't worry about your stitch count, we'll decrease that away at the end of the braid when we get round to the other side and start joining everything together. So the step one for the actual Vikkel braid repeat itself is to come in through the back of the work here and insert the tip of the right hand needle through the back loop of what is now the second stitch on the needle. Not that stitch which we just cast on, but the old first stitch, which is now stitch number 1, 2 on the needle. So we're going to go in through the back loop there. We're going to knit that stitch, but leave it on the needle. We're not going to try and slip anything off yet, because besides we've got a stitch in the way. We bring the tip of the right needle around to the front of the work, and then go into the front loop of the first stitch, exactly as normal, and knit that stitch in the normal way. Now we've completed both of those stitches, we can slip both of these loops off the left hand needle. Off you go there. And the last part of the maneuver is to slide or slip the first stitch from the right needle back to the left. Now you can't see what's going on here, but it has already started to create the first stitch of our horizontal lateral braid. That's the repeat. Let's do it again. So going around the back of the work, we go into, actually before I start that, it's important to note here that if you just carry on working the Vikkel braid at your normal stitch tension, you will find that the layer of stitches, the row of stitches above the braid, is incredibly loose and floppy, and we obviously don't want that. So it's important to make sure that every time we start the maneuver, we just give the working yarn a bit of a tug, otherwise all these stitches here can get a bit loose, and that's what causes the slackness later on. So with a bit of a tug there, going around the back of the work and into the back loop of the second stitch on the needle, wrap the yarn, sorry about that off camera, and knit that, leaving it on the needle, right needle tip to the front and in through the first stitch there, through the front loop as normal, knit it, and slip both of those stitches off. You can see I'm fighting a little bit with the tension there. I am deliberately keeping these as tight as I possibly can. It can get quite tiring on a long braid, however you will thank me for it later. It really does show up better in the work if you keep it nice and snug. And then don't forget to complete everything by slipping one stitch back from right to left. Nice little tug. Let's do that one more time and then we can see what starts to occur. In through the back loop of the second stitch on the needle, wrap, oops, there we go, and knit, come around to the front, in through the front loop of the first stitch on the needle, wrap and knit, and then slide both loops off and return one stitch, split the yarn there, from right to left. Now let's examine what we've got appearing here. can you see we've got this beautiful line of horizontal V's already. 1, 2, and this one will become the next one underneath this stitch here. Let's do that one more time. So nice little tug there to keep everything nice and taut. In through the back loop of the second stitch on the needle. Knit it. There we are. Come around through the front, leaving everything where it is, of course, not slipping anything off the needle. In through the front loop of the first stitch on the needle. Knit that exactly as normal. Slide both of those 2 stitches off the needle there and return the stitch to the left needle. Now you can really see how that braid is emerging. So I'm going to carry on now, and I'm going to work across to the end of this half of my magic loop, and I'll show you what to do when we get to that stage. As you can see, I've now got to the last stitch here. This is the stitch I've just transferred back from the last set of maneuvers, and this Vikkel braid is looking absolutely magnificent, horizontally working its way just under the needle there. So what do we do on this last pair? Well, nothing different at all. We still go in through the back loop of the second stitch on the needle. We still knit that, come around the front, knit the first stitch on the left needle. Both of these get slipped off together, and then we transfer that last stitch exactly as we always would back there. Now of course I don't have a second stitch on this needle with which to continue, so I need to turn the work, and in order to do that I want this stitch to go round and join the others on the back. So to do that I just pull this needle all the way through until it pops around, and I can turn it there, and I brought it with me round to the other side. I can reposition my needles as one normally would, except I've got my yarns tangled up. There we go, slide that one in, pull that one out, and we're ready to continue exactly as before. I'm going to do that. I'm going to work all the way along this way, and when we get to the end I will show you how we join seamlessly in the round. Here we are, I've now made it all the way back round to the end of my round here, and you can see on the other side that the braid started at this point. So this last pair I worked no differently apart from the very last stage, so let me show you that now. In through the back loop of the second stitch on the needle, knit it, come around to the front, in through the front loop of the first stitch on the needle, knit it, bring to the front and slide both off. The only difference is that we're not going to transfer this stitch back onto this needle. There's no point, we've already worked all of the stitches on the back side here. So let's have a little look. Remember that we created an extra stitch by casting one on at the very start of this process, so we've now got one more stitch than we need on here, and if you can actually see, that one's kind of a bit extra anyway. This stitch here is the last one of the worked columns here. So this is the stitch that we want to get rid of. And as you can see, if I can get this right up close to the camera, as the braid works its way along here, it becomes this last stitch. So if we were just to leave it there, then our braid would kind of go zoop up onto the next row. We don't want that. We want this stitch here to get worked into, I can show here, the beginning of the braid, which is over here. So in order to make that happen, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to, actually, do you know what? First of all, I'm going to take the rather unorthodox step of breaking the working yarn. Breaking the working yarn, I'm going to thread it onto a tapestry needle, because we're actually going to graft the last stitch worked onto the first stitch of the braid, and we're going to do this like so. So the first thing to do is to slip this stitch off the needle, and you can see it already wants to lie horizontally and become the next stitch in the braid. Now this is the stitch here that we're going to work through and then create a whole new loop and come back into it. Let me show you how that works. So with our tapestry needle coming from behind, we're going to come through that stitch, which has the benefit of catching it so that it doesn't go anywhere, because we don't want to lose it. And then when I'm pulling the yarn through, what I don't want to do is pull it tight. I want to just pull it tightly enough so that this last loop is the same length as all the loops behind it. That's probably about right. Is that going to focus there? There we go, it's probably about right. Then I'm going to turn the work around and we're going to have a look at what's going on the other side. The first stitch of our braid is this one here. It's the first horizontal stitch. Ignore this, this is just part of the cast on that we had before. So this is our first one here, and what we're going to do is I want to, can you see how this loop comes out of this bit? This loop comes out of this bit. Well, I want this one to come out of a loop that I'm about to make, and to do that we just go in behind both legs of that first horizontal stitch. You can work from bottom to top or from top to bottom, it really doesn't matter at this stage. Of course, what I've done is I've just managed to snag that around my needle, which I don't want. So once more, I just went behind the two legs of that first horizontal V, and I'm going to just pull that there. Then we want to go back to that that last stitch, and this is where it gets a bit tricky to find on camera. It's actually very simple in concept. We want to make sure that this goes back into the loop it came out of. Getting all tongue-tied because I'm trying to do this on camera. And the stitch I'm talking about is there. Can you see we've come out of it there, we've gone through there, and now we're going to go back round and complete the stitch by going in to the same loop as the one we came out from. Pulling that pretty snugly means that we get a completely unbroken line of the braid that works its way around the stitches. That's really hard to get on camera, but if we can see, here's one V, out of it comes this one, out of that one comes this one, and we're back into the line of the V there. Once you've done that, all you would need to do is weave in this end somewhere on the inside of the work, or my preferred method, you could simply perform a spit splice, joining this back onto the working yarn that's now attached to the ball, and then continue working and knitting around there. Let me just take this off the needles so you can see, without the needles getting in the way, exactly what we've done. This is the start of our round. Not the neatest job there because I was trying to do it on camera, but as you can see, our braid continues all the way on, each stitch coming out of the one before it, all the way round. This is where the back of the magic loop worked, and then we are continuously right back to where we started, and round you go again. That is the most invisible way of working the Vikkel braid in the round.